appreciate you guys taking time out to learn some things about health and about blood work in particular. So I'm going to start out by asking a question. How many of you ever had blood work done and got your test results back? Okay, a lot of you. Did you ever wonder what all that meant?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
at first, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you go, what does all this mean? You know, especially if it's, quote, normal and you still don't feel good, okay? So we're going to talk about that tonight. And I think it's important just to give you an overview of what blood work is, what it can do, what it can't do. I like it a lot, but it can't do everything, especially your standardized blood panel. So we're going to look at some of these things tonight and help you understand a little bit about it. First of all, when your physician orders a blood panel, he usually performs a two-part test. At least I do, and most physicians do. You get a general chemistry panel, which measures organ function, minerals, and serum lipids, which is your fats, and a complete blood count with differential, which measures your immune system. Then there's other tests you can do that will allow for much greater specificity and of what you're of looking for very specific things going on in the body. So we're gonna look at all of these today. I want to talk about ranges. So when you get a blood panel back, you get these ranges. Okay, so like you get let's say the thyroid, the T4. You get the T4 goes from 4 to about 12. Okay, so if I can compare this to a car, these areas here, these boundaries, are where your oil light's going on in your car. Okay, so let's say you get a T4 back, and the lower value is 4, and yours comes back as 4.1. What do you think about that? You think maybe, you know, like you've got about that much oil left before your oil light goes on. Do you think maybe it's time to put a little oil in your car?
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, most of the time you get that back, and your provider will say, you're fine, you're within normal ranges. Your oil light isn't on yet, so we're not going to worry about it. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know about you, but I like to check my oil and change it regularly, and when it's a little low, bring it back up, because the car runs better that way. Mm-hmm. So does my lawnmower. So those are called average or reference ranges, and they represent the average non-hospitalized patient in the area. So those values represent really sick people walking around, okay? Because the average non-hospitalized patient is not well in this country. So we don't use those values. The ideal ranges are tighter, okay? These represent how your body's supposed to work. So if you're in the ideal ranges, that means your body's working pretty well, generally, okay? Your oil light's not just getting ready to come on. These are the ranges that I use in terms of how I define whether somebody's healthy or not. Now, values outside of either range may or may not produce symptoms. I mean, I've seen people where their oil light was on and blinking. They didn't have any symptoms, okay? Did they have problems? Oh yeah, they had big problems. They were heading into some big problems. They didn't have any symptoms. You don't always have symptoms. Why is that? First of all, blood work represents what has been happening in the body over a period of time, okay? It does not represent usually something that's really acute, except for if you have a really acute, serious infection, then that will generally show up. But normally what you see in blood work is something that's been going on for quite a while. The second thing is, it represents what's being transported in the body, not what's necessarily happening in the tissue. Hair analysis shows what's happening in the tissue. Blood work, the blood values represent what's being transported. So the analogy that I like to use on this is the interstate highway system. So if you stop like 10 semis in a row, and you check what was going on, you could see, sort of get an idea of what's being transported across country. For example, here's an interesting tidbit. I heard, somebody told me, I was in Grand Island last weekend. They said that Grand Island supplies 10% of the country's meat. That's a lot, you know? And so you probably know more about that than I do. So if you check trucks coming out of Grand Island, okay, they'd be hauling, probably a lot of them hauling meat, okay? But if you check the economy in Grand Island, it may be totally different than what's being transported on the interstate, okay? So what's being transported on the interstate doesn't represent what's going on in each community in Nebraska. So that's the difference between blood work and hair analysis. So let's look at electrolytes: sodium, potassium, and chloride. They're critical to cardiac neurological function, pH, and kidney function. So if somebody comes to me and I do blood work on them, they have a really low sodium, right away I don't think, boy, this person must be on a low salt diet, because generally the body is going to reclaim salt and recycle it, okay? That person has adrenal problems. They have low adrenal function, and what's happening is the adrenals are not working right. They sit on top of the kidneys, and they're pulling sodium out of the blood and dumping it into the urine. And so low sodium usually means low adrenal function, or they're just not consuming very, very many fruits and vegetables. They have a low salt, a low vegetable diet. Elevated sodium and chloride usually indicates too much salt consumption. Somebody comes in, they have both elevated sodium and chloride, they're probably eating too much salt. What about potassium? Potassium is really, really important for heart function, and potassium is also one of your main alkalizing minerals in the body. It makes your body alkaline. Your body functions better in an alkaline environment. So when potassium goes up, usually low adrenal function or adrenal fatigue, could be dehydration, or it could be tissue destruction, okay? Because potassium is an intracellular mineral that's in the cell, more in the cells than outside the cells. So you break the cells open, it spills out potassium, then that'll elevate potassium in the blood. What about low potassium? That's adrenal hyperfunction. In other words, your adrenals aren't fatigued, but you're under a lot of stress, and your adrenals are pumping out cortisol, and that will lower the potassium on blood. Could be diuretics. You know, if somebody comes in, they have low potassium, I want to know, are you taking blood pressure medication? Are you taking diuretics, which force minerals out of the body? Could be fatigued heart muscle, or diets high in sugar and refined carbohydrates can cause low potassium. What about urea nitrogen? Urea nitrogen is the byproduct of protein metabolism, and it's what your urine basically is made out of. So an elevated blood urea nitrogen in the blood indicates that your kidneys aren't working very well. Your kidneys are unable to filter out the urea nitrogen, and it's winding up in your blood. It could also mean very severe dehydration, okay? There's other things that will show dehydration other than this, and I have to look at all those things together. Creatinine, when you get a serum creatinine back, it reflects prostate, urinary tract function, or muscle metabolism. So here's the thing. If you, let's say you're going to get blood work done tomorrow, and you go work out real hard tonight, it's going to break down muscle, it's going to elevate your creatinine is going to go up. I've seen that happen with me before. So, BUN, urea nitrogen. When urea nitrogen is really low, they're either not getting enough protein or they've got a pituitary problem, an endocrine issue. Total protein. So what do you think What do you think total protein would indicate? Of course, you can also read it. It represents protein metabolism. Like how much protein are they taking in? So if somebody comes in and they're eating pretty normal protein, you know, fair amount of chicken, fish, but their protein is low in the blood work, what do you think that might mean?
Deficiency.
Okay, but they're eating enough. They're eating enough. Let's say they have, you know, a meat protein every day, like some chicken or fish every day, which should be certainly adequate protein, but they have low protein in their blood. What do you think that means?
Could it be a chronic infection?
Possibly. That's not what I would look for first.
Kidney dysfunction?
Wouldn't go there first. Maybe, think about this, maybe they're eating it, but they're not digesting it and absorbing it very well.
Leaky gut?
So your body's not breaking it down?
Body's not breaking it down. Why would that be?
The enzymes in your colon or, you know, your intestines?
Pancreatic enzyme dysfunction certainly could be that. How about low stomach acid? Low stomach acid is what breaks down protein.
Yeah.
So what would cause low stomach acid?
Taking Tums all the time.
Yeah, great answer.
'Cause you have
Yeah,
ulcers and
Tums,
stuff like that.
you know,
Rolaids?
Rolaids,
Too much.
Prilosec, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, things that lower it. Here's another thing, is if you're just overeating all the time, I know no Americans ever do that,
Oh, never.
but they do that in Europe, okay? They don't do that here, okay?
Yeah.
So,
That's why they're all skinny.
yeah, so overeating all the time depletes stomach acid, okay? And so eventually, your stomach can't keep, your parietal cells in your stomach can't keep up with the amount of acid that it needs to break down the food, and the protein just drops, okay? So in that case, we'd want to, you know, get the people that eat a little bit less and give them a hydrochloric acid supplement like Zypan or Hydrozyme or something like that. That's the way I use those. Now, the protein is a combination of two things, two blood proteins, albumin and globulin, okay? Let's see. This ratio, albumin to globulin, can tell you some things, okay? So, if the albumin globulin ratio is high, that usually means one of two things: dehydration, or you've got an immune system issue, okay? Globulin is the part of this that deals with the immune system, okay? You've heard of immunoglobulins, immunoglobulin A, IgG, IgA, IgM. That's what they're talking about, immunoglobulins. Okay, a low AG ratio, this is what I see a lot. A lot of people that bring their blood work to me, especially from physicians, from other doctors, a lot of them have these really low albumin globulin ratios. When somebody brings me blood work with an AG ratio of 1 or below 1, like 0.9, that person's in bad shape, okay? There's something going on in their system. There's some catabolic issue, some disease issue that's going on. It doesn't tell me what it is, but it tells me there is a problem in that person's body, okay? And we got to find it. So AG ratio can be very useful in just giving you clues about what's going on in that person's system. Now, glucose, hemoglobin A1C. Now we're talking about blood sugar, okay? So glucose tells me if you know, how well is their body handling blood sugar. So let's say they come in and their fasting glucose is pretty high. What does that tell me?
They're taking too much sugar in their diet?
Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably one thing. Yeah.
Too
What
much
else?
soda
What else
pop.
might it tell you?
A high level of insulin resistance?
Yeah, the body's not handling the sugar they're taking in. It
Or
can't
they-
handle it.
Or they're not producing enough insulin.
Not
Yeah.
enough insulin.
Yeah, their body can't handle the amount of carbohydrate that they're taking in.
Yeah.
Now, hemoglobin A1C, that tells you what the average blood sugar is over a 3 to 4 month period of time. Lower high blood sugar levels usually reflect mineral deficiencies or dietary problems. So can you think of any minerals that might be important for sugar metabolism? That minerals that might be low? Let's say they come in with a blood sugar of 120, hemoglobin A1C, the high end is like 5.5. So let's say they come in, they're 5.9. What minerals might they be lacking?
Sodium.
That wouldn't be the one I would go after first, Terry.
Chloride.
No, it's not an electrolyte.
Oh, okay.
Like iron?
You said mineral.
Yeah, well,
Magnesium.
you're getting warm. Iron,
Iron.
we'll talk about iron later. Iron wouldn't be one of them. Okay. I know you guys are grasping for
What about
straws
zinc?
here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so chromium would be number one.
Okay.
Zinc,
Selenium.
I wouldn't, not for blood sugar, but selenium for thyroid function. Yeah.
Okay.
So the two I would look at are zinc and chromium, maybe magnesium. There's another one called vanadium. I didn't expect you to know that one, but chromium would be the number one thing. And chromium you get in nuts and seeds and nutritional yeast, okay? That's where you get a lot of chromium. So the product that I give for that is a product I have called Cataplex GTF, which stands for glucose tolerance factor. It's a very, very high chromium yeast. There's a chromium in there that's very metabolically active and able to help control blood sugar, okay? That would be one of the first things I'd give them. So you have a hemoglobin A1C that's high. That means that your body does not handle blood sugar very well at all, and it just sort of stays high all the time. Now, you don't want that for a variety of reasons, but have you heard that people that are really susceptible to COVID-19, have high blood sugar? Okay, so high blood sugar really tamps down your immune system. Okay, serum insulin. So insulin, we know, helps break down blood sugar, brings it across the cell membrane. Elevated serum insulin levels are linked to diabetes, cancer, obesity, and inability of cells to be sensitive to the hormone, and it locks fat into the cell. This is, in my opinion, of all the blood tests that I do, maybe this is the most valuable test that I do. It tells me more about a patient's lifestyle and health than any other test that I do is insulin. If I see a patient, and let's say the only thing that I know about that patient is their insulin levels. They come in and their insulin levels are below 5. I know that they're doing some things right, okay? They're either exercising properly, they're eating properly, but that tells me a lot about their lifestyle. If they come in and they have an insulin of 15, I know that there's some issues there, that they're sort of adopting the typical American lifestyle. So very good, very valuable test. What about calcium and phosphorus? So calcium is really important because calcium will drop when you have low stomach acid. So calcium levels, if a calcium level is low, I'll look at protein. If they're both low, I know that there's a stomach acid issue. If they have adequate protein but low calcium, then I know that probably they may not be getting quite enough calcium in their diet, okay? Here's another thing I want you to understand about calcium. A calcium level that's really high is really bad, okay? Usually, if somebody comes into me and they're taking a lot of, their calcium levels are really high, they're really out of the top range, then I'm thinking maybe they've got some sort of bone disease where their body's breaking down bone and the calcium is ending up in the blood. and that could be some sort of metastatic cancer, some sort of some sort of bone disease. Here's another thing about calcium, and this is something I want you to understand, is that most calcium supplements that people take are screwing their bodies up, okay? Not good for them. High levels of calcium supplement, when you take a lot of calcium supplements, especially that aren't balanced with magnesium, that actually causes dysfunction of brain cells, death of brain cells, and all kinds of other problems in the body, okay? There's some really, really good research on this. And it amplifies the effects that Wi-Fi, the negative effects that Wi-Fi have on the body. However, when you take a calcium that's balanced with magnesium, then that's okay. That's why I use calcium lactate. It has a 5-to-1 ratio of calcium to magnesium, which is pretty close to what there is in the body. So you can't get too much of that. But too much calcium is not good at all. And most people are taught that they need, especially women, that if they don't take 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day and 400 IUs of vitamin D, that their bones are going to crumble and rot and they're going to get osteoporosis. Nothing could be further from the truth. That is absolutely, completely untrue. There's no that. So phosphorus, which is a test that I don't do currently, reflects vitamin D levels. I just measure vitamin D directly. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Magnesium, very important. Activates over 300 metabolic enzymes. Magnesium actually is protective against brain cell deterioration from too much calcium or too much Wi-Fi. Magnesium affects hormones. It decreases the body's need for calcium, and deficiencies in magnesium can lead to all kinds of problems. Heart problems, elevated blood pressure, and many other symptoms. A lot of people out there are deficient in magnesium. Cholesterol triglycerides. Now, I do an entire talk on cholesterol and triglycerides, and I will do that. I think I'm doing that later. Am I doing that this year? Is it on the schedule?
I don't know.
Let's see.
If it isn't.
It doesn't look like it. Okay, I may not be doing that this year. So I'm just going to say this. If you have high cholesterol, your cholesterol's going up, okay, first thing I'd look at is your diet. How much sugar and refined carbohydrate are you eating? Are you eating trans fats? Those are the things that elevate cholesterol. Now, let's say your cholesterol is going up and you have a good diet. You exercise regularly, you eat a healthy diet. What might that mean? That's a tough question. That if you get the answer to that, man, you should get some sort of prize, okay? What might that mean? Good diet, regular exercise, but cholesterol is going up. Okay, cholesterol, what does cholesterol make in the body? What's made with cholesterol? So, hormones. So your body may have you may be under a lot of stress, and your body may need more hormones. So your body's making more cholesterol so it can make more hormones out of the cholesterol. Cholesterol also plugs up things. In other words, it plugs up holes in arteries and things like that. So if you're eating a really bad diet and your arteries are getting roughened and they're starting to leak a little bit, your body takes cholesterol and plugs those holes. And so that's why cholesterol is blamed for arterial plaquing in the body. But what's happening is that roughening, usually due to a bad diet, the cholesterol is coming in there to clean that up. Okay, so an elevating cholesterol. Women generally, as they get older, their cholesterol goes up and is perfectly normal. Okay, so when I see elevated triglycerides, I know always that's a bad diet. Too much sugar, too much refined carbohydrate. Now, ALK-Phos, SGOT, SGPT, and GGT, These are all liver enzymes, okay? Whether they're high or low, that can tell me whether the liver's toxic, congested, they've got pancreatitis, they've got B6, zinc deficiency or magnesium, bone calcium disorder or cellular destruction. That's what these particular things tell me. They tell me a lot about the liver. Alkaline phos. Alkaline phosphatase is an enzyme. When it's high, the liver will either be toxic or you have bone destruction. So how can I tell which is which based on what I've told you so far? Let's say the alkaline phos is high. Let's say it's like 130. Okay, so 70 to 100 would be normal, 130 would be high. How would I know if it's bone destruction or if it's a toxic liver? Just from what I've told you so far.
Measure the calcium level in the blood.
Bingo, Terry.
Right there.
That's exactly right. You got it. Calcium, man. If the,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
if
high.
the alk phos is high, the calcium is normal, it's probably liver.
Yeah.
The alk phos is high, but the calcium's high, probably bone. Okay? So, good job. You scored on that one. Low alkaline phos, zinc deficiency. So, let's say the sugar's high, the alk phos is low. You know that that person needs zinc. Okay, LDH, lactate dehydrogenase. I like this test because it tells me a little bit about mitochondrial function. When mitochondrial function normally, that person is going to have better energy. Okay, so high LDH can tell me that low mitochondrial function, liver, gallbladder, cardiovascular disease, or destruction. So the LDH has to be really high before you're getting cardiovascular disease or heart attack. But it's very, I like the test for what it shows me about mitochondria. Now, RBC, hemoglobin, hematocrit, all of these tests show us how well your body is utilizing iron. Low values, usually anemia. High values, too much iron in the blood. Low transferrin can mean liver dysfunction. But these tests basically tell me what's going on with anemia and iron. Now these things, you've seen these before, MCV, MCH, MCHC, you go, what the heck is that? When these values are low, your body, the person's anemic. When they're high, that means they have B12 and folic acid deficiency. So, then we're going to get to the immune system. This is really important now with the whole COVID thing because, if somebody comes into me and they've got low neutrophils, elevated lymphs, chances are they have a viral infection, okay? So that's what these numbers tell me. Do you have a virus? Do you have a bacterial infection? It can also tell me if they have chronic food intolerances. So if somebody comes in with low neutrophils, elevated lymphs, and they have a lot of GI problems, bloating, gas, reflux, probably we're looking at food intolerances more than anything else. You have to take a good case history for that. Eosinophils and monocytes, which you see all the time on blood work, when they're elevated, usually a parasite issue. When they're both elevated together. When just the monos are elevated, it could be the body's just cleaning up an infection. When they're both elevated, man, I think parasites. I ask them, have you ever lived or been in a third world country or foreign country, and I want to know that. Because if they've got parasites, we want to find that out and get rid of them. Basophils, allergy, toxicity, or infection, okay? And then there's vitamin D. I test vitamin D on everybody. Vitamin D is a powerful immunomodulating hormone. It modulates your immune system. I don't know if anybody watched the video I posted last week. It shows that Wi-Fi, our exposure to Wi-Fi actually changes vitamin D receptors and it lowers our immunity. So the whole theory about Wi-Fi contributing or 5G contributing to COVID, there may be something to that. It's important for calcium. It can also important for mood stabilization. Everybody in the wintertime, not everybody, but a certain percentage of the people get depressed in the winter because vitamin D goes low because we don't get out.
Not out in the sun.
So the sun comes out, you get more vitamin D, it elevates our moods. And then the last one is high inflammation. So if somebody comes in and they have a high HSCRP, I know their body's inflamed, and we need to find out why, okay? We need to find out what's causing the inflammation in that person's body. Now, that's probably enough blood work for the evening at 7 o'clock, okay? Does anybody have any questions about anything I've gone over? Hayden?
I have one with a hemoglobin and a hematocrit.
Yeah.
Those tests, if they're high or low with, let's say, your hematocrit, does that show that you have an iron deficiency or a calcium deficiency?
Iron if they're really low. Could be
Yeah.
iron deficiency, yeah.
Okay,
Could be, yeah. Absolutely.
all right.
Yep.
If people have cancer, let's say they got leukemia, that's a bad one.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
That's a bad one. Is there blood tests that right away when you
Yeah, their white count will just be through the ceiling.
real high?
Yeah,
Okay.
real high white count.
Yeah.
Be through the ceiling. They
Like
come in with a white count of like,
100 times higher than usual.
20,000. There's a big problem
Something's
there.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, good. Okay,
Thanks.
that's all I have for tonight. What are we doing in 2 weeks?
Children.
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 Yeah, children.
Kids.
Kids, yeah.
Bring your kid.
Okay. Yeah.